Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, Opie started his new job and couldn't join a camping trip with his girlfriend and their friends. He agreed to let her go, despite her active social media presence and some past issues. When he found out her ex was on the trip, she lied about it. They broke up, and her ex later revealed that she had cheated during the trip. The man was heartbroken and, after a confrontation, she moved out. Now, let's get into the story. My girlfriend, 23 female, really wanted to go on a camping trip in July of the same year we graduated from college. This camping trip was with a group of close friends and classmates that were all going their separate ways that summer. I, 24 male, was already hired in the career field I was hoping for. I was eager to start, and they wanted me to start immediately after graduation. So even though I couldn't attend the camping trip, my girlfriend asked me if she could go. We've been together for 3 years, almost the entire time we spent in college. Throughout that time, she maintained a presence on social media. She would share everything she went through, even the embarrassing moments. One time, she was caught on her phone in class, and the professor asked her to stay after class. As soon as he started talking to her about her excessive phone use, she was live streaming. The awkward conversation made it clear that my girlfriend was only defensive of the choices she made, without taking the time to consider why her choices might not be that great. After the stream, she read the comments where people called her out for her entitlement and refusal to take accountability. This upset her so much that she locked herself in her dorm for 2 days. I was eventually able to get her to come out. I told her that people mess up sometimes, but when you do, you just try to do better next time. She appreciated my words and actually stopped posting as much as before. Still, she made at least one live stream video per day. I noticed in the comments of her videos that she had a lot of random men telling her how beautiful and right she was. One of these men was her ex-boyfriend, who was her high school sweetheart. She had tons of people complimenting her and telling her she could get through anything. I wondered if all this encouragement from her ex and strangers had an effect on how she went through life. Even though she never cheated on me or gave me a blatant reason to distrust her, I still wanted to know who was going on this camping trip. She started naming females in the group first, but I told her to screenshot all the names from the camping group chat and send it to me. She hesitated and said she'd rather just tell me. I asked her why, and she couldn't think of a reason. What I was asking wasn't that hard to do, so she did it. It took her longer than I expected, but she sent me a list of 13 people. Some were men, but I knew them all, and we were like brothers. They were so responsible that I actually felt better knowing they'd be there. My girlfriend and I lived together in the furnished basement of our landlord's house, but I like to call him our overlord. He was nice enough, but we had to make sure our television was on low volume by 6 p.m. or else he'd tap on the floor. There was a kitchenette where my girlfriend was sweet and talented enough to cook meals for us. While she was doing just that, I kept hearing her phone ping. Eventually, I checked it and noticed that there were 14 people in the group chat. She must have edited the screenshot of the list to cover up the name of her ex-boyfriend. She ended things with her high school sweetheart after they started attending our college. We met shortly after, and she waited an entire year before even telling me he was her ex. He was one of the friends in our circle, but after she told me that, I kept my distance. I didn't trust that he wouldn't try to take her back the first chance he got. And now her sneakiness was proving my hunch to be right. I approached her about this, and she was prepared to swear to me that he wasn't going camping. He was only part of the group because he was dragging someone else to the meeting point. She said that was why she edited his name out of the list, because she didn't want me to worry. I scrolled through the chat and other messages on her phone and didn't find anything from him. When she begged me to trust her, I gave in. I didn't find anything incriminating, and he wasn't part of the planning or discussion at all. Still, the night before the trip, I asked her not to go because I didn't agree with it and I couldn't go along with her. I added that since I was her man, I felt that she was my responsibility. She told me I was overthinking it and being ridiculous because I wasn't her father and she was her own person. I countered, saying we were in a committed relationship, so I should protect her. She told me she had to be able to do what she wanted, otherwise our relationship wasn't going to last. I was devastated when I went to work the next day. I kissed her goodbye, uncertain whether or not it was the last time. While she was on her trip, I watched the posts and pictures she was tagged in by her friends. I noticed right away that her ex was on the trip, and she was standing or sitting by him in all the pictures, so she blatantly lied to me. On the picture of them sitting by the fire together, her friend left a comment that said she just loved how my girlfriend had to change the sleeping arrangements. A winky heartfelt followed. I called her immediately. As soon as she answered, I told her we were over. She freaked out and started sobbing, asking why, claiming she hadn't done anything wrong. I told her I knew she slept with her ex and that he was there with her on the trip. I told her I didn't trust her at all anymore. She sniffled and took a moment before asking me why I thought that. I hung up on her. She actually showed up to my house the next day. She was waiting for me outside when I got home from work. Believe it or not, she was with her ex. He drove her to my house. I was upset as soon as I saw them. I got out of my truck and started telling her to go get her stuff out of my place. She started telling me that she wasn't cheating on me. We repeated our lines until we were blue in the face. Then she looked at AP and told him to talk to me before she walked into the house. I was surprised when he told me that she told him she'd only continue seeing him if he swore to tell me that they didn't sleep together and that he only decided to tag along at the last minute. However, the truth was that they did sleep together a lot because she wanted to. She told the group that I broke up with her the night before the trip. Then, when I called and broke up with her, she lost it because she was caught and didn't really want to lose me. That's when AP realized she was a huge liar and not worth investing his time into. He decided to drive her here just so he could tell me the truth so we could both dump her. This was the best opportunity one was going to get, so I thanked him, even as she walked out with just a single backpack of her stuff. AP told her not to put it in his car because he didn't want anything to do with her. I added that neither did I. Her jaw dropped, her backpack fell off her shoulder, and she started whining, pleading with both of us, either of us, to change her mind. It was pathetic. AP got in his car after wishing me luck. I walked past her, closing the door to the basement before she could stop me. She didn't have a key. She cried and wailed outside the door, trying to say anything to get me to let her in or at least get more of her stuff. The only thing I said to her through the door was that she could come back another day and her stuff would be waiting for her outside. She hated that and complained about her stuff potentially getting stolen or rained on. I ignored everything she said and all the banging until she called her mother. She loudly pleaded with her on the phone right outside the door. I put headphones on and eventually discovered that she was gone. Her mom refused to help her get any of her stuff and bring it to their house because, according to her, there was no room. I think her mom was extremely bitter towards her for ruining a great relationship and having to move back in while her parents were trying to enjoy their alone time together. After 2 years, my ex still had not gotten a job within her degree or even asked me about the rest of her belongings. Instead, a short time after moving back in with her parents, she realized it was much easier to start selling pictures and videos of herself online. That's how she makes money. And whenever her parents go on a trip or vacation, she makes videos in their kitchen or living room like the house belongs to her. I sold her belongings and actually got a decent amount of money from the handbags, which is great because I was the one to buy her some of them. I haven't dated since this experience, but I'm not upset about it. I feel content working the job I've always wanted to work while I lift weights and aim to be a wise man. Today's second story. In this story, OP was married for 17 years to his college sweetheart. Despite his efforts to reassure her, his wife craved attention from other men and often dressed provocatively. He discovered her affair with their son's friend through security cameras. After confronting them and informing their son, he divorced his wife. Now let's get into the story. I, 47 male, and my wife, 46 female, had been married for 17 years when we got divorced. I met her in college. We were good friends at first, but after a while, I developed a bit of a crush on her and I asked her out. We dated for a few years before she ended up getting pregnant. When our son was 3 years old, we ended up getting married. In total, we've been together for 23 years. Throughout all of the years we had been together, I thought we were happy and in love. We watched all of our friends go through countless struggles with their relationships while we remained steady throughout everything. The only issue that ever really arose for us was the fact that my wife liked the attention of other men. It was something that I felt insecure about at first, but over the years I had gotten used to it. As far as I was aware, she never did anything with other men, but she would get dressed up to go places because she knew she would be catching their eyes. She would flirt with bartenders or waiters to get free things at restaurants. She told me that it made her feel confident and sexy, and after giving birth and getting a bit older, she was having issues with her confidence. I did everything in my power to assure her that I thought she was the most beautiful woman on the planet. She just wanted to be desired by other people. It made her feel like she had this feminine power, and she didn't want to lose it. My wife was very good looking. She took care of herself, going to the gym regularly, taking care of her skin and hair, and wearing clothes that aligned with the latest trends. I always thought that I was very lucky to have her. We only had one child together, our son. Sending him off to college was difficult for my wife and me. We had gotten so used to him being around the house that everything felt empty without him there. It was a hard pill to swallow, but he was moving on with his life, and there wasn't anything we could do about it. When we dropped him off the first semester of his freshman year, I was very aware that his roommate was surprised at how his mother looked. My wife caught on to that as well. On the car ride home, she kept laughing about how she felt like the hottest girl in the world. We made jokes about it, and I never thought anything would really come of it. His university was a 6-hour drive away from us, so when we went to pick him up at the end of the fall semester, I kind of assumed that my wife would dress for a road trip. We were going to be on the road for 12 hours, and it was probably expected to be wearing sweaters and comfortable pants, things like that. Instead, she got dolled up to go pick our son up. She wore tight jeans and a t-shirt that exposed a lot of her cleavage. She was wearing makeup, and she curled her hair in the morning. I didn't quite understand why she was making such an effort to go pick him up. Part of me knew that it was because she wanted the boys and his dorm to pay attention to her, and it kind of weirded me out. Thankfully, when we arrived, a lot of the students had already left for the winter break, so she didn't get as much of the validation that I thought she wanted. However, our son's roommate was still there. He was very clearly attracted to my wife, and he kept staring at her while we were helping my son pack his things. It was honestly something that I was considering addressing with her when we got home, but my son beat me to it. On the car ride back, he told my wife that he wasn't happy with how she dressed around some of the guys in his college. She promised him that she would make sure to cover up in the future, almost shrugging it off like it was a joke in some ways. I could see that my son was actually embarrassed by how his friends reacted to her. I didn't like that she was playing it off like it wasn't a big deal. When we got home later that evening, I continued the conversation with her. I told her that it was starting to make me uncomfortable, and she was acting somewhat defensive about it. Instead of getting into an argument, we both just dropped it and figured we would deal with it when the time came in the future. A couple of years passed, and our son was a junior in college. Regardless of how my wife dressed, going to pick him up and drop them off, some of his friends and roommates still made comments about how she looked. She listened to what we said and stopped wearing such revealing clothes, but it didn't help. At the end of his junior year, we went to help him move out of his apartment off campus. We drove to the university and helped him load everything into my truck, as we always did. He was living in an apartment with 3 other guys, one of whom was the roommate that he had during his freshman year. On the car ride back, he asked us if it was okay for one of his friends to come visit for a week. There was a film festival nearby that they both wanted to go to, and I said that it would be fine. My wife agreed with that. A few weeks passed while our son was home, and we were drawing closer to his friend coming to visit. In those weeks, my wife was on her phone a lot more than she normally was. She was texting with someone, and every now and then I would hear her on the phone whispering. I had no idea who she was talking to. One night my wife was in the shower, and I went in to brush my teeth. I saw through the glass shower door that she had her phone in the shower with her, and she was recording herself. She stopped when I walked in, but it was obvious what she was doing and denied it. When I said it looked like she was recording herself, our son's friends came to visit for the week as we expected, and everything started out normal. I could see that he was extra nice to my wife because he was obviously attracted to her. I figured that my son would be with him during the day, so it never occurred to me that my wife would have any alone time with him. We had a pool at our house that my wife used quite often in the summer months. She would swim in it regularly for exercise as well as use it for recreation. I came home from work one day and I saw my wife outside in a very small bikini with our son's friend. They were both in the pool, playing around with each other and splashing water in each other's faces. They kept diving under the water and grabbing each other to pull them under. It looked like they were just looking for an excuse to touch each other. Neither of them noticed me coming right away, so I hid from them. I didn't want them to see me because I was curious about what exactly was happening with them. We had cameras in the backyard, so instead of going outside, I went into my office and logged in to watch the cameras live. Neither of them had any idea that I was home, much less watching them. I saw them as clear as day, both go under the water and kiss each other. When they came back up, my wife looked around the pool area to make sure the coast was clear, then kissed him again. I could faintly hear what they were talking about through the audio, but they were saying something about how glad they were to finally have some time alone. Right after that, my wife started touching him and reaching inside his swim trunks. He said something about not being sure they had the time, but my wife told him that she thought it was even hotter because of that. They finished what they were doing and my wife told him that she would visit him in the guest room after I went to bed. My gut had told me that there was something going on with her that I didn't know. I hated seeing that I was right to think that. We had been together for a very long time, and I trusted her more than anyone in the world, and she broke that. I didn't know if they had slept together already, but it was clear that they were planning on it. What they did in the pool was already cheating, but they were about to take it even further. They both toweled off and went inside, and I quickly turned off the footage and made it look like I was busy doing something for work. My wife walked by the office and commented on how she had no idea I was home. I tried to cover my emotions and play it off like I had just walked in the door. She came to me about an hour later and told me that it was time for dinner, but I lied and told her I wasn't feeling well and was just going to focus on it, work instead. I couldn't stomach being around her. I knew that I was going to catch her in the act with our son's friend later that night, and I didn't think I was going to be able to pretend to be okay with everything. All I needed was to get the evidence to prove that she was having an affair. I pretended to go to sleep around the time that I usually did. My wife climbed into bed next to me and stayed there for about half an hour while I pretended to sleep. When she thought I was completely out, she quietly climbed out of the bed and left. I waited about 5 minutes and made my way to the guest room that they were both in. They were clearly trying to be quiet on the other end, but I could hear the squeaking of the bed frame underneath them. I pulled out my phone camera and started recording so I could open the door quickly and have the video evidence that I caught them. I opened the door and saw my wife naked and on top of our son's friend having intimate with him. They were both shocked when I opened the door, and my wife quickly jumped off of him to run over to me. I had already started walking away from the room when she caught up to me. She was trying to whisper and be as quiet as possible about the entire ordeal to avoid waking up her son, but I yelled back at her. I told her that I didn't understand how she could do that, especially with her son's friend. It didn't take long for her son to wake up and stand in his doorway, asking us about what was going on. I looked at my wife and waited for her to explain to him what she'd been doing. When she told him what happened, my son rushed into the room where his friend was and tried to attack him. He yelled at him and called him a myriad of names that I can't repeat here. I ended up breaking them up and taking my son out of the house because he was so frustrated. I understood where he was coming from, but I didn't want him to get in trouble. We were gone for about an hour, just driving around and letting off some steam. When we got back to the house, his friend was gone. He packed all of his things and drove off. My son yelled at his mother, telling her that what she did was wrong and she should have been ashamed. She cheated on a man who had stood by her for almost 25 years for somebody half her age. My wife ended up realizing that there wasn't going to be a way to smooth over what she did. So she left the night and booked herself a hotel room. In the morning, I had a conversation with my son to tell him that because of what happened, I would be leaving his mother. He completely understood, and he told me that if I hadn't gone to him about it, he would have suggested it himself. I could see that my son was almost as hurt as I was about everything. Not only was his mother cheating and their parents getting divorced, but one of his best friends was now out of his life because of it. I felt immensely bad for him, and I couldn't believe that his mother would do something like that to him. I started the divorce proceedings and prepared myself for anything that might come my way. My son told his other roommates about what happened and that he didn't want to live in an apartment with his old friend anymore. Because they were renting an apartment off campus, they agreed that they wouldn't be living with him. They sent him a message and told him that he would have to find another housing option. When it got closer to time to drop my son back off at school, we realized that his friend had to move back into on-campus housing. Because it was so last minute, he ended up living with a nightmare roommate who couldn't find anybody else to live with them. On top of that, the on-campus housing was almost twice as expensive as renting an apartment off-campus as they planned, so he was forced to take out several extra loans to cover the cost. Having had to pay off my own student loans, I knew that was going to bite him in the butt for quite some time. As for my wife, we did get divorced. She didn't work, she was a homemaker, so she was forced to get a job and start taking care of herself. I was awarded the house and I ended up selling it because I didn't need everything that was in there. I bought a much smaller house in a different neighborhood with enough room for my son and me. He seemed to really like it when I showed it to him over the winter break. Now he has graduated college and I am living in the new house by myself. My son is living in an apartment by himself in the city for his job. It's been about a year and a half since everything happened, and I'm trying to get myself back out there. I spent almost 25 years with my ex-wife, and I don't know how to date moving forward.